As I walked the dew-speckled path from Candlekeep with my companions in the cool embrace of spring's infancy, the earth beneath our feet still bore the fragrance of fresh rain. We were bound for Beregost with thoughts of trade and flour sacks, when the hum of an unusual sport met our ears. Through the glistening foliage we glimpsed Atomie sprites, their pale green forms no taller than a scroll, engaged in a frenetic game. Their laughter was like the tinkling of tiny bells, and their game a marvel of aerial dexterity involving decorated seed pods kept afloat by nimble kicks, sending them arching over the outstretched arms of ancient oaks to score points in a familial competition. Their clothing, woven from the very essence of spring, fluttered as their 4 dragonfly wings beat with the precision of a weaver's shuttle. But our presence, 3 sages from Candlekeep, was an unwelcome shadow over their mirth. We had strayed unwittingly too near their grove, not treading upon the worn paths of those who respected the unspoken boundaries of the Fae. Their joviality soured into high-pitched ire as they brandished their tiny yet formidable crossbows, a clear sign that even the smallest of creatures demand respect in their dominion. The Atomie, fierce as they are charming, hurled elvish insults that hung in the air like thorns. Their wings buzzed with indignation, a storm of gossamer and ire. Yet I, a dire halfling sage, found solace in the common tongue of Elven. With a voice steady as the ancient stones of Candlekeep, I offered our apologies, not with words of defence, but with a gesture of peace, a small clay pot of honey left upon a thaynut tree stump at a respectful distance. We altered our course, giving a wide berth to the aerial contest, and as we departed, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of admiration for their Atomie, and their world so grandly small. The flight of a seed pod was as critical as the most arduous of scholarly debates within the hallowed halls from whence we came, and so, with their chides fading behind us, we continued our journey, a tale of diminutive fae and sages alike tucked into the folds of our robes, to be recounted amidst the stone, wine, bowls of spiced rock crab mornay, and dusty old parchment upon our return. Arriving officially in Dungeons & Dragons Lore with the second monster manual for 1st edition in 1983, then featured later in a monstrous compendium entry for Greyhawk under the general Sprite category, there was an all-Fae themed Dragon magazine, issue 155, printed in March of 1990 with an article by Vince Garcia, and they were included in the Monstrous Manual in 1993, and finally found again in the Tome of Horrors in 2002, published by Necromancer Games. The Atomie have yet to have an official update for the modern game, aside from the Pathfinder fans, who will be familiar with them, though the Pathfinder Atomies are much more aggressive and a bit less effective than they should be, as we shall discover. But they are easy enough to create both a monster and player character listing for 5th edition. You can use the option for creating a fairy character found in Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse on page 14, but of course the Atomie is of the tiny size category. Their base walking speed is reduced to 10 feet and they have a -3 penalty to strength and disadvantage on strength-based checks unless their character class is specifically all about being strong. However, the opposite is true for their dexterity, and their flight speed is a blistering 40 feet per round. Atomies can innately turn invisible. They are very skilled at woodland stealth with a +8 bonus to hide checks and have an assortment of other magical abilities. They can use any cantrip from the Druid spell list except Thorn Whip, Shillelagh, Produce Flame, Primal Savagery, and Create Bonfire. They can also cast an assortment of 1st and 2nd level Druid spells, except those that deal with fire and heat. And once per long rest, they can cast Conjure Animals, Dispel Magic, Plant Growth, Speak with Plants, and Summon Fae. They also have the Fae abilities of Misty Step and can cast Blink once per long rest. Their tiny spears and crossbows are deceptively vicious and coated with poison. The target must succeed on a DC 10 Constitution saving throw or become poisoned for 1 minute. If its saving throw result is 5 or lower, the poisoned target falls unconscious for the same duration, or until it takes damage or another creature takes an action to shake them awake. Keep in mind that although the damage from the weapons is only 1 point, they are typically +6 to hit at a 40-foot range, and a group of well-concealed Atomies can fire salvos of crossbow bolts from 160 feet away. Even at disadvantage, a lot of those are going to hit, and those saving throws, though weak, will really punish just one critical fail. A group that gets spread out with the Atomies using magic, summoned animals and insect swarms will find getting knocked unconscious with no adjacent ally to wake them up a very serious problem. Unless the characters get some free speed boosts or Misty Step, the Atomie's flight speed will give them an edge on a retreating battle where they move out of reach and fire volleys of missiles or spells, with woodland creatures keeping their enemies occupied in a hectic skirmish, at the very least slowing down the interlopers while the Atomies turn them into living pincushions. In short, never underestimate the Fae. Like scorpions, the smaller they are, the more dangerous they tend to be. In my experience, when facing, if even the possibility you're in the territory of a community of Atomies, Grigs, other sprites, fairies and such, be very wary and absolutely mind your manners. The Fae are weirdly fixated on the finer points of etiquette and fiercely protective of their woodland home. So do not go randomly stomping on bugs, firing bows at or setting snares for small game. Only ever gather fallen wood and never ever harm any flowering plant. Atomies also sleep during the daytime, so keep the noise down and carefully check any mature oak trees before you think to climb up them or set a campfire close enough for the smoke to drift into the tree canopy, because that really annoys them. If you are checking for Atomie dwellings, they will be well concealed from the view below, but easier to spot nestled up in the crooks of tree branches, and will extend into the tree trunk with natural knots being the doors and shuttered windows. They'll also have a burrow in the roots of the tree with entrances around the base of the tree trunk, and often a more distant entrance, usually close to a pond or stream, that can serve them as an emergency escape. But they just use it to fetch water, swim and wash things. Plus it has something to do with the fresh airflow being good for the tree. I don't know, you'd have to ask a druid. Inside the dwellings, a single family of Atomie live in comfort. They have carved furniture, cozy sleeping nests, stored honeycombs, seeds and nuts, musical instruments crammed into any spare space, and more that they are crafting in comfortable spots where they gather and chat. In the den, the Atomies are at rest. Outside the den, the Atomies dance, play instruments, sing and enjoy performing coordinated gymnastic and acrobatic formations that are really quite spectacular to behold. Anything a circus acrobat or a skilled skydiving team, figure skater or professional dancer can do, the Atomie will have mastered by the time they were teenagers. They also have all manner of games and sports they play, including acrobatic stunt flying races where they zip around complex and dangerous obstacle courses, snatching feathers and ribbons to score points, or playing sports where they fight for seed pods and have to get them to some sort of a goal spot to win. They don't take anything particularly seriously, but there is a pride involved, and they play games, cheer teams, gather food and share it while watching performances, and spend time with all the other creatures living around them, helping them gather their food, build their nests, hunt their prey, guard their young, and play with them as well, which builds a strong bond of acceptance and also trains the creatures from birth to defend the Atomies and trust them completely. Atomies never hunt animals and do not eat meat, not even insect meat or fish, and will only kill an animal that is very sick or becomes deranged and violent for no good reason. You probably won't ever see the Atomies unless they invited you. They really don't like the presence of outsiders and resent having to interact with the non-fey, because they see it as a disruption of their very involved business of sporting events, gathering, crafting, training, performing arts and so on. Even a visit from a very polite and regal elven person is going to disrupt some sort of grand event and throw their community into some sort of minor chaos. It's just inevitable that they will be annoyed to some degree, and this can range from curt to rather bitter and vengeful. The best you can hope for is a somewhat exasperated welcome and an urging for the non-fey visitor to stay in a particular area, not get in the way or touch anything, which if they do so, they will have quite a lavish feast of gathered food served to them and entertained by their wonderfully high-pitched choirs chiming, beatboxing, creating layered melodies and yodels. They're quite amazing and very easy to fall asleep to, but whatever you do, very politely inform your Atomie host that you're going to fall asleep, because you do not want to fall into a slumber around the fairies without their leave to do so, Or you may wake up a year later with braided hair full of earwig nests and a snail sleeping in your snoring mouth like it's a drool jacuzzi. You might get woken up by a hungry owlbear cub. The Atomie won't stand in the way between a large predator and its natural desire to eat you. That's just the way of things. Atomies stand about half the height of your typical pixie. They rarely stand taller than 28 centimeters, and only a very sporty adult will be heavier than 800 grams. They are faster, more agile flyers and dancers. They don't produce pixie dust and are able to communicate with almost any forest creature able to do so, and some you would assume could not, such as mature oak trees. Pixies are described as frolicsome, but I think this kind of is lost on mortals who don't understand the culture overly well and just think the Atomies and other sprite folk dance around in circles to music during twilight parties with little flower goblets of fey wine and mushroom cap platters of sweet treats passed around like hors d'oeuvres. The reality is that they are just highly energetic, sporty people with a lust for life, fun, competition, and an enormous respect for nature. They don't see a lack of metalwork and complex technology as any sort of detriment. They live in perfect harmony with their environment. Atomies are quite smart. The average sprite has an intelligence score of 14. They have perfect pitch and an encyclopedic knowledge of music, dance, and games. They're culturally skilled at druidcraft and animal handling. They learn to craft all the tools, garments, recipes, and magic they need. Plus, they have very involved, deep community connections and carry the history of their families and their communities in their songs, dances, and folktales. Yes, Atomies can be wickedly annoying, even deadly, but they can also live and let live with due respect and understanding. They can be peaceful and quite beneficial culture to have around. You just have to accept that certain behaviors of the larger humanoid mortals are going to really annoy the Fae and learn to be more patient. Nature provides. Don't be greedy. Give back to and live in tune with the seasons. Nature is bountiful. Work together and you'll have plenty of time to play together. Find the fun in whatever you do. The Atomies can really teach us a lot about healthy living. No wonder they live for such a ridiculously long time. Oh, and when I asked them how they kept such healthy teeth despite eating loads of honey and nectar every day, they told me to chew tree gum. I'm pretty sure that was just them messing with me though. Atomies are fairly common in the heartlands around Candlekeep and Baragost, from the foothills of the Troll Hills to the Fangs, but not much further past the Wood of Sharp Teeth, and they don't tend to live very close to the ocean shore. A good 20 minutes walk and you can run into them though, so just not anywhere near a well-travelled path, as they avoid those just as they avoid the big folk who use them. A great number of Atomies, the Grigs, their cousins, and other sprites migrated from the Moonshae Isles to the mainland along the Sword Coast many centuries ago. I'm not sure why. It's a bunch of islands I've yet to get to, which is ironic considering they are so close to Candlekeep, relatively speaking. Atomies can make quite good player characters, but adventurers are very rare among them as they have such close ties to their family and community. They don't like to travel very far from home if it can at all be avoided. That's all I have for you on them for now. Thanks for listening, and as always, I'll be back with more lore for you very soon.